Hey, this is Mark Patterson back again with another episode of Finding Your Summit. And this week, I'm very excited. I guess I get excited on all these podcasts, but this one in particular because he's a friend of mine from way back when I played for the New Orleans Saints. He was just inducted into the Hall of Fame. Think about that, the Hall of Fame, the NFL Hall of Fame, which is amazing. Played the longest of any guy ever in the history of the NFL. 25 years. Imagine that. I played about 5 and they threw me out. And anyways, this guy had just an amazing career, long time down in New Orleans, Atlanta Falcons, set the all-time scoring record ever in the history. I mean, again, it's mind-blowing what he accomplished. Morten Andersen, just amazing guy, great friend, and fantastic football player. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. And as always, I totally appreciate all the love that you guys have been giving me on iTunes, ratings, reviews. Again, it helps get us more exposure. So if you haven't done that, please go in and do so and enjoy this podcast. It's fun. You'll feel the chemistry. All right, here we go. I am so excited to have my guest on. His name is Morten Andersen. He just came out of the Hall of Fame. You know, I played with Morten for a few years down in New Orleans, and some people call him the Great Dane. Some people call him a Hall of Famer. I call him my friend. Morten, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm not coming out of the Hall of Fame. I'm going into the Hall of Fame. You're already kicking me out.
No, well, I want to bring you back in because it's really about the ceremony that you just did, and it was such a wonderful, thing, and we'll get to that in a minute. You have such a fascinating story, and the reason why it's fascinating is because to me, like most of America, we all grew up in this sport. I started playing when I was about 6 years old in the backyard on the pavement in the streets with all my buddies. And you're a guy who grew up in Denmark, right? So,
right.
So first of all, what was that like growing up? Describe your childhood.
Active, very active, involved in sports, just out from sunup to sundown. Just literally, there was no internet back then. There was no mobile phones. Hey, meet me at the clock tower at noon. And if somebody wasn't there, well, something happened. It was just literally a very pure, joyous way of life back then.
And certainly you didn't have American football. So what kind of sports are you playing?
I'm playing soccer. I'm playing team handball, which is an Olympic sport. And I'm a gymnast. And I ran track and field, so I was involved on every aspect of every sport. It seemed like, and that's all I did.
I was invited after my NFL career to go back and try out for the Olympic handball team, the U.S. obviously handball team, and I chose not to do that for some different reasons. But I'd seen it played, and I think when I was in Switzerland. One of the most fascinating games I'd ever seen. And I remember when you and I were back in Hawaii, you were in the Pro Bowl, and you had invited me to come over there with you, and I gladly did, and we'd be out playing tennis. I was just surprised for a kicker, your hand-eye coordination. But, that makes a lot of sense to me now between soccer and between handball, which really, combines the different skills of running, throwing, catching, and, trying to get that ball in the net.
I think one of the reasons that I had a long career, 25 years, was because I played multiple sports and I used multiple, muscle groups and motor skills. Especially gymnastics really helped me on a flexibility level and my core strength and prevention of injuries. Because in kicking, as you know, anything you do for a long time, for whether it's serving a tennis ball or playing golf, swinging a golf club, or kicking a football, you have these repetitive motion injuries that eventually are going to, rear their ugly head. And I really think having that base of gymnastics and just being an athlete really has helped me have a long career.
Yeah, no, that's been great. So let's go back. Let's stay in Denmark. And you grew up in Copenhagen. What town did you grow up in?
Yeah, I was born in Copenhagen, and my brother and I have a twin brother, and we were very young when we moved to the west coast of Denmark to a little fishing village, and my mom and dad moved over there because of their jobs. My dad was a psychologist, my mother was a teacher, and we moved to this little 9,000 people, little village on the west coast of Denmark. It was a big change from Copenhagen, but it surely was a wonderful place to grow up.
So what was the inspiration, or was it your parents that forced you to go to the States, or is that something that you wanted to do? But so you end up having this exchange student, experience where you're just going to go to the States, I'm sure, for a few years during your high school, and you had no idea what was about to happen to you, right? Which obviously was life-changing. What was the impetus around that?
My mom and dad always encouraged my brother and I to be adventurous, to ask questions, to be inquisitive, be curious about other cultures and countries. We were taken at a very young age to different countries. My dad had a little red motor car, a little convertible, and we would sit in the back. And it was a two-seater, but somehow we were able to squeeze in there, very young, down the German Autobahn. And so from a very young age, we had this adventurous spirit in the family. And so they just encouraged. My brother went to the South Pole on a polar expedition ship when he was 16. And then I'm at home by myself, and they just posed a question: what do you think about becoming an exchange student? And I really wasn't that interested. I was very happy in my Danish life with my soccer, my handball, my Danish friends and gymnastics, but they convinced me, and the idea was to come over here for 10 months, immerse myself into the American culture, learn the language, and then go back home. But that changed, obviously.
Yeah, that changed. So how does that? Walk me through the process of. How does that work? So you're over there, you kind of get ripped out, although you want to go and adventure and see the States, but so you got 50 of them to pick from, right? How does that work? Where you throw it out there and then you land in Indianapolis, I think it was.
Yeah, of all places. I had 3 states I could pick on the application, and the application process was, it was about a year in advance. So this thing had been going on. I picked Washington, which you're familiar with the state of Washington, obviously.
Oh. The dogs. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, that lit a fire under you. I like it. So we had Washington, I picked Colorado, and I picked Idaho. I was literally just looking at a map of America and said, I want to go there because there's mountains. This is different than Denmark. Denmark's rolling hills, water, lakes, and I end up in Indiana, which is very much like Denmark. So that was really that was just by chance. But what a great family. Landed there my 17th birthday, literally landed there on my 17th birthday and blew out birthday candles. And the next thing I know, they're asking me if I wanted to go see an American football game. And I'm thinking, great, soccer.
So tell me, I think you're talking about now the Baker family. So let's go there for a minute. So tell me about, so you land with this host family, I think that's what they call them. Mm-hmm. And now you come into their life, and so how did that happen? Where you come in there, and then the I don't know them personally, but somebody in the family suggested that you either want to play or you want to go to this game, and pique your interest. How did that play out?
Well, they knew my application, so they knew I was interested in sports. They knew I had played sports, so it was sort of just going, well, 1 + 1 has to equal 2 because he can kick a soccer ball, and we're sure he can kick a football. So they didn't think it was a reach to ask if I wanted to be a kicker on their high school team, and they had a need on the team for it, and they didn't have a soccer team at high school, so it kind of forced the hand a little bit, but They understood that I was an active young boy. They opened their home up. My family back home had a boy from Colorado for 10 months that moved into my little room back home. So it was it was a beautiful thing, very unselfish thing of this family. They had 4 kids already, so it wasn't like they needed another son.
Right.
But they were they were very willing to sort of open up their home to a new culture and a new boy and expose, I think, their children to that. And I think that was the impetus on their side for bringing me in. But as far as being introduced to the game of football, that was purely by chance. This was literally not supposed to have happened.
That's
it just.
So this is your junior year?
Senior year in high school. I'm supposed to stay 10 months, and two days after I have arrived in Indianapolis, I'm trotting onto the field wearing number 42, a high school jersey, wearing all the shoulder pads and the helmets. And I didn't want to wear this stuff. Soccer, you just put on shin pads and shoes and you're good to go, shorts and a T-shirt, you're good to go. I was like, why do I need all this stuff? It's just, and it became very obvious that I did need all this stuff very quick.
So that season must have gone really well for you because, to blow in like that and then get on the radar of many of these different colleges out there and end up getting a scholarship, I assume, to Michigan State. So tell me what that senior year was like for you in terms of never kicking a ball to all of a sudden you're kicking this thing and then you're finding success.
Yeah, it was trial, trial by error, just trial by doing, and really, we didn't kick very many. I think I had about 5 or 6 field goals all year. But the thing that I think differentiated my performance from maybe others was on the kickoff. I was, in high school, you kick a ball into the end zone, the guy's got to take a knee, can't bring him out.
Right.
Every kickoff was through the end zone. So it became a non-play, and it became a joke where you would see me kick the ball and then run to the sideline before the ball had even landed. And it was just it was one of those weird things. I don't know. I could kick it a long way, and that was the point. And it opened a tremendous amount of doors.
Yeah. So side story to that, to the people who are listening, I used to get in the huddle with Morton because I was on kickoff team, and of course Morton is our kicker. And I would just look at him and say, "Hey, Morton, would you mind pulling out the one wood and letting the thing fly?"
Yeah. Right? He does have a driver.
Yeah, because I was one of those guys that had to go crash through all those big dudes down there. I just did not like doing that. So
you were the gunner. You were the gunner on the outside.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
You were fast. You had speed, so we liked you on the outside, but we also needed you catching the rock on third down. So we didn't want you to. We didn't self-preservation. We didn't want you to get banged up.
That's right. So you kicking the ball out of the end zone when not back in the day certainly preserved my body to where it is today. But okay, so let's go back. So now you do well enough. You're getting nosed. You're kicking the ball out of the end zone. People can't return. So now you get a Scully to Michigan State, and I think that might have been around the time that Magic Johnson was doing his thing there, right?
Yep, they won 1979. They won the national championship in basketball. We won the Big Ten championship in football, baseball, and basketball in 78, 79. So we were pretty hot. Michigan State was pretty hot back then.
Wow.
So it was a cool time to be a Spartan. I could have gone to Purdue University. They offered me a full ride as well, along with a bunch of MAC schools, smaller schools. But Michigan State became the place for me. There was a Danish kicker there named Hans Nielsen, who literally lived an hour and a half from me back in Denmark. I didn't know him, but when he came and recruited me, we spoke Danish. He took me to Michigan State on my official recruiting trip, and we just had a wonderful time, and he could explain everything. He said, listen, I've done this for 4 years, and so I thought, well, if Hans can do it, I can do it. And that's why I went to Michigan State.
And how was your English back in the day? I mean, obviously you're doing just fine now, but
doing okay. I still have an accent, especially the more wine I drink, the worse it gets. But just the way it goes. But but it wasn't great the first year. It was school English. We learn English in Denmark from the 3rd grade, and then we learn German from the 5th grade and French from the 7th grade. So multilingual is pretty common, when you're a Danish student. But English was good. It was adequate, but it became good very quickly because I really think because I was just thrown into this environment. This raw, intense environment that a locker room is, that a football team is. Now I had to learn the slang. I used to think, funny story, when you do it, when you make a mistake and you say "my bad."
Yeah.
I used to think it was called "my bag" with a G. So for the longest time, I would say to people as an apology, my bag," and they would look at me, but they wouldn't correct me. So for years, and then when I finally got married, I was doing "my bag" still to Jennifer, and Jen goes, "What are you saying, man?" I go, my bag? He goes, "No, it's my bad." So there were a lot of little, nuances and mistakes along the way, and I wish people would correct me when I do make a mistake, but that one just hung on for a long time.
Yeah, that's well, that's just if you're from the States, you're just crediting that to that's a European thing, and maybe that's what they do over there. So why would you correct yourself?
Well, I had another one. A guy would ask me, well, "What kind of soup do you like?" I'd say, "I like Lent soup." Lent soup. What I meant to say was lentil soup, but yeah. I don't know. Have you ever had Lent soup?
Yeah, no. Well, yeah. Actually, I have. Not your version, but
Dry finish.
Yeah. Okay, so you played 4 years at Michigan State. You did well. Did you start your freshman year?
Yes, I did. We won the Big Ten my freshman year, and I actually was a leading scorer in the Big Ten my freshman year. I played with Kirk Gibson. You might remember that name.
Yeah, sure. Baseball.
From Dodgers, and the famous home run he hit, limping around the bases.
Yeah, he was he a quarterback or running back? What?
He was a receiver, just like you, dog.
Okay.
Yeah, he he was very fast. White boy ran 4.2, 4.40.
Oh,
so
God.
Get yourself around that one, man.
Well, I would probably still be playing today if I could do that, which I can't. So, okay, so you have this great career at Michigan State, very successful. You made the right choice, and just as the stars would line up, then you get drafted in what round by the Saints?
Fourth round, pick, fourth round by Bum Phillips.
Yeah. So you go to, people could argue. I can't remember exactly the time, but I do know that they were always in the cellar. The Saints, horrible, the bags over the head, all that kind of stuff, right?
The Aints, yeah,
the Aints. So you're down there now for what, 2-3 years before Jim Mora takes over?
Yeah, he comes in 85. I'm there with Bum Phillips in 82, 83, and 84. And I believe Bum gets fired after the 84 season. Actually, he leaves a couple of games before the end, and Wade, his son, takes over, maybe with 3 or 4 games left in the 84 season. And then Jim Finks comes in, Jim Mora comes in, and Tom Benson buys the team from John Meekum, and there's a big change, as you know.
Yeah, no, it's hardcore. They got it done. So it was, where I came into the picture was in 1987 with you, and it was a couple things really stood out to me. Is number one, I'd just come from the Raiders, and the Raiders were littered with stars, and Howie Long's on the team, and Matt Millen, and Lester Hayes, Marcus Allen, and so Jim Plunkett's our quarterback. So they'd been in the Super Bowl 2 years before. And then I get there, and so you're in L.A., a huge, metropolitan area, and so guys like Marcus Allen kind of ran the town. They were as popular as any actor that was here. And the thing that I just found so fascinating is when I got down to New Orleans, the kicker, which in the history of me playing sports and being around kickers, they were never the star. They were just the guys over there. It's the punter and the kicker, but down in New Orleans, you were kind of like a folk hero. You'd earn that. And, you and I had a lot of fun running around town and going to different restaurants and bars and meeting people and whatnot. But it was, again, it was fun to see you, in that capacity. And you were very gracious to the people that respected you.
Yeah, it was, I never sought that out. I felt it was very important to immerse myself into the culture, and, being 21, 22, 23 years old and single in New Orleans is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing in LA, in Los Angeles either, I'm sure. But, I just really felt that it was important to give more than I took, and to use the platform. It was the only show in town, the Saints. I mean, they loved their college football, LSU and so forth, but really it was the only show in town. So, we had pick of the litter. I mean, it was pretty much, if you did the right thing and you were loyal to the team and the city, they would love you back, and they still do love you back. I still have a very strong connection to the city of New Orleans. I still feel very strongly about my roots there, and that was kind of, as a ball player, that's where I had that was my proving ground, the formative years where you go from a young ball player and you figure it out. And thank God Bum was there, because he had the patience with me, because my start was dismal. I mean, I thought I was going to be gone before I had a chance to really stay. But it did turn out great. And you're right. Normally you look at the kicker and he's sitting at the end of the bench and not part of the team, but I just never felt that. I always felt like I was a huge part of the team. You know what I mean? Always felt like I was integrated.
Yeah, well, so there's a lot of people on this podcast who don't know this, but I'm gonna spell it out right now, which is, you ended up playing 25 years in the NFL. You are the all-time leading scorer. You played in New Orleans for 13 years, and one of the things that really struck me when I got there, and I'd never seen this in my life, is your work ethic, which was different from any other kicker, punter, special teams player that I'd seen. And one of those things that you did is, I don't know if this was your idea or Jim Moore's idea or something you did in college and you picked it up somewhere, but you literally took the width of the goalpost and you cut those things in half. And it would be literally like taking a basketball hoop and making it, half the size and then shooting on that every day. So you were always pinpoint accurate right through those small goalposts. So when we got out on the field, when you're looking at a normal size goalpost at Candlestick Park or any other place we were playing, they just must have looked like a gigantic basketball hoop, right?
They did, and it was my idea. This was before arena ball, and so I had to work on 8-foot goalposts was a huge advantage for a couple of reasons. It made the focus much narrower and the middle much more much more defined. I mean, aiming for the middle is what it's all about. The middle never changes. That's another thing that's the beauty about the middle.
Yeah.
But you're right. The perception of fooling yourself, and so it's kind of like the more you bleed at peace, the less you bleed in war, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a Santayana type of Portuguese philosopher, but it really is. It is the fact that you make it so difficult in practice and so distasteful in practice. So you have 3 hours on Sunday afternoon where you can just go out and be free and enjoy it and be an athlete. And so that was my whole thing. It was, I wanted to prepare as hard as possible, as meticulously as possible, as detailed oriented as possible. And then, it was great on Sunday.
Yeah, well, you certainly, proved your worth on Sunday. And I think too that sometimes, when you're playing in the Superdome, as we were, it's a very controlled environment, obviously, because it's a dome. And then you get out and again, places like playing in Chicago or New England or Candlestick Park in San Francisco, where you get these swirls and whatnot, and you really need to be pinpoint accurate. And that ball is going to move to the left or the right, but if you're aiming for the center, you're taking out that margin just a little bit, and your accuracy was just absolutely deadly. And you're so pressure, at the very end of the game is when it got down to, that was what we're playing for. If we're down by 2 or 1, we're going to go for the field goal because we knew Morton was going to nail it. And so it was fun for me to watch that. It was fun for me to see how a true professional went about his craft. And then, at the end of the whole train, of all the guys I played with, you played literally the longest of any guy in the history of the world, which is amazing, right? That's great.
382 games, believe it or not. It's and that's not including playoff games, preseason games. Mark, I added it up. It was over 2 years of my life I spent in training camp. Yeah, that's crazy to think about, but that's a fact. But the thing that I'm most proud of, one of the things I'm most proud of is people can't say, well, you're a dome kicker. Well, I was a dome kicker. Most of my life I've spent in domes, but my numbers outside are better than inside. So when I was on grass and outside in the elements, my numbers were actually better. This is something we presented to the hall for my induction before the meetings in February. We compared my numbers with Vinatieri and with Stenerud, who was the only kicker, and my numbers were right there or exceeded, and especially on outside surfaces. So that's what I'm most proud of, probably.
Yeah, no, it's something, of course, to be proud of, and you were nails, and you were fun to watch, and you won a lot of games for a lot of teams. So, okay, so the name of this podcast, of course, is called Finding Your Summit, right? And I think it's all about overcoming adversity and finding success. And somebody, I think, that sometimes take a time out and they look at somebody like you and they're like, well, what problems in the world would Morton ever have, right? I mean, here, he's a very successful guy. He played 25 years in the NFL. He's in the Hall of Fame now. But I think it's relative also to your craft, right? The craft that you are trying to perfect. And then when something happens like A, you get cut, B, you get traded, or C, which is the worst, which happened to me, is nobody wants you anymore, right? And you still have that desire to play. It happens, right? You're going through that adversity. And so let's fast forward. You leave New Orleans after 13 years, and now you go to the Giants and some other places, the Falcons. But tell me about that place that you fell in when you were out of football for a year. You knew you still could still kick, but nobody was picking up the phone. And what was that like day to day, that frustration that you're going through?
Yeah, and so let me just backtrack for 10 seconds and just say this, that I think everybody has distasteful situations in their life, and it's how we deal with them that really kind of defines us. And so the 20 months I'm in a public park when I'm 45 years old, that was a distasteful situation. It was distasteful in 94 when the Saints said I was declining player, and I left for the Falcons, but I put that to rest. But let's talk about 2005 when I just left the Vikings. I had a good year with the Vikings. I'm 45 years old, and I had no doubt that I was going to play again. And then literally 2005 turned to 2006, and the phone did not ring for 20 months. Not a year, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And people started looking at me a little weird and saying, you've had a good run, Morton. Get on with your life. And I was 77 points away from becoming the all-time leading scorer in the history of the game. So that carrot was there, and people could say, well, that's kind of self-absorbing. That's kind of narcissistic to go for that. I say, man, you better have these big goals out there. You better have this sublime reward waiting for you, because otherwise the risk is not worth taking, right? So the bigger the reward, the bigger the risk. And it could have gone terribly wrong. It could have been. It could have. And thank God for Jim Mora Jr. giving me a chance there in 2006, in October, after the second game of the season, where I'm sitting in my basement having a cold one with my neighbor, and the Falcons are playing and their kicker is having a bad day. And I turned to my neighbor and I said, I'm switching to water now, because the phone's going to ring. And he throws up his hands and go, it hasn't rung for 20 months. Are you ludicrous? And
I also remember I got a call because Jim's my best buddy, right? And you're like, hey, dude, you need to get on the phone with your buddy, and which I did.
I'm using all the resources. And you did, and so did Jim Morris Sr.
Yep.
You guys are both hammering him from both sides, saying, "What are you waiting on? Let's go!" Give this old man a chance. And he did, and he brought me in, and I was competing against. The next day, after I'm sitting in the basement, I switched to water. The next day, I'm in there against 3 or 4 flat bellies half my age, and it's mano a mano. It's who can hit the orange stripe in the middle the most, and I hit it 13 out of 14 times. And my biggest decision at that point became, do I want blue or black ink on the contract? And, yeah.
Well, I remember, so you get the gig, right? So now you're back with the Falcons, and I'm down there at a game against Pittsburgh, and it ends up going into single or double overtime or something crazy. And they drag you out there, and you go to make a kick, and I don't think you made it, but somebody was offsides. So
I did make it. I made it. It was 35 yards from the right hash.
Was that it? Okay, so you remember better than me, of course, right? But then, but it didn't count because there was a timeout or somebody jumped off sides or something happened. I can't remember, but you ended up going back in and kicking it. Anyways, you were the hero. Got down. There's all the drama in the game, and you kicked the thing. I was running out in the field, and it was like old times, But I was just so happy for you, to go through that and that mental anguish of going out on a little league field every day and having whoever will actually hold the ball for you, retrieve your trainer. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I've been there. So again, it's about, not giving up, keeping your eye on the ball, and then getting after it, and then accomplishing that goal that you want. Right.
Yeah. It's about that, but also when nobody's watching, right? When nobody's watching you still got to put in the work. And it's at the end of the day, it's you putting your head on the pillow. And so for me, I knew I had to put in the work, especially at my age, because I knew that when I did get the chance, I had to be ready. I had to be absolutely razor sharp, because I could not give them one excuse to say, well, we told you so. He's too old. He's too weak. He can't make the kicks. We gave him a chance, but I never gave anybody a chance to say that, because I was literally the best option. I was better than the competition. So I earned the right. You earn the right to be great. You earn the right to your personal summit, to use your vernacular, You earn that right by preparing, by working tirelessly towards whatever your personal dream is, whatever it is. If you want to climb all mountains in the world, the top 7 or 8 summits, right?
Yep.
You earn the right. You have to be in incredible physical shape. You have to plan. You have to strategize. You work the plan the work. I mean, And so whether you want to be the greatest plumber in the world, right, and be known as the go-to guy when something goes wrong with people's toilets, hey, I'm making maybe a horrible example, but still, I don't care what you do in life. You earn the right to be great by preparing and having passion for it and process-oriented. And if you really immerse yourself in the process within the preparation phase, the result usually is great. You make the process great, the result is great.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of this goes back to the first 2 minutes of this conversation, and that was about you growing up in Denmark, playing all these sports, which made you very well-rounded in handball and soccer and gymnastics and things like that. And then you treated your body like a temple. You always stretched a lot, and you worked on the weights, and you were in good shape. And that the longevity, I think, of your career, certainly benefited from the things that you did from kind of day one. It's funny because you threw out the climbing analogies, and I'm 55 years old now, and all the guys I'm climbing with are in their 20s, right?
Yeah.
And I'm still beating them up the mountain, and I do that with a sense of pride, and the pride of knowing that when I go into the gym every single day, that I've got to work harder than everybody else, and otherwise I can't compete and I can't get up these mountains, and that in some cases means your life, right? And so similar type deal for you, but in your case, we're talking about the NFL, we're talking about the hardest place to be in the most competitive environment. Mm-hmm. And then the longevity of staying healthy and then becoming the all-time, scorer in the history of the game is just astounding and incredible and great. And my hat is off to you.
Thank you. But I would also say that as you get older as an athlete, you train smarter, you get smarter. And so I made a conscious effort in 1989 when I was 29 years old. I hit what I would call a performance plateau, where I had a dip, my own personal standards. And so it wasn't a great year, but it wasn't by normal standards, it was a solid year. But I knew that I'm either going to get better or I'm going to get worse. And I was trying to prolong my career. So that's when I kind of created my own Team Anderson. And I recommend this for anybody listening, that they seek out people that are smarter than themselves in areas that can help them and support them. So I picked a guy that was great in the fitness arena, Mackie Shilstone, and everybody in the business knows who Mackie Shilstone is. He's worked with Roy Jones Jr. He's working with Serena Williams right now. Very sports specific type of guy. He would train me to become a better kicker, not a better anything else, just sports specific. And I hired a sports psychologist. I had the best chiropractor. I had the best massage therapist, and so forth. So all of those people together on my team was what I would call Team Anderson. You would have Team Patterson. I'm sure you have people that you go to for certain needs, what it is, whether it's for your body, your mind, or spirit, or whatever. And you would just really engage them and be part of that. And you would learn to train smarter as we get older, and not overtrain, but just quality over quantity. And I think that's what prolonged my career, is that I really was very structural in the way I approached my craft. I didn't overkick. I didn't kick 300 balls a day. I actually didn't kick a ball till June 1st. So when the season was over, I didn't touch the football. I would do the movement. I would do lots of other things that was kicking related, but wouldn't touch a ball. You think I was ready to kick a football in June?
Yeah, motivated, right? Another guy that has taken that same approach is Tom Brady. So, with his health and his fitness and his trainers, and he's been very, obviously the guy's playing like he's 25 years old right now, right? And who knows when it's going to end, but same mentality.
It's all about inflammation in the body as we get older. get rid of inflammation. If you can rid of inflammation, people talk about, I'll go off on a tangent a little bit, but I'll try to reel it back real quickly. But heart disease, and you talk about cholesterol, it's really about inflammation in the arteries. That's the problem that we're having. It's an epidemic. So inflammation, and that goes back to what you're eating. What are you putting in your body, right? So if you have a clean diet, you're eating clean and eating things that are anti-inflammatory in nature, whole foods and things like that, you just don't have the same problems that people have when they engage in a high sugar, high salt diet and fast food and so forth. You know that because you've been a fitness nut since I've known you.
Yeah.
You can speak on this subject much better than I can.
No, I don't know if I can, but I think we're two birds of the same feather when it comes to again health and nutrition and fitness, and it just blows me away. It's just you walk in and you see some people what they put in their body, and it's just junk in, junk out, and so there's no surprise.
I mean, you're not going to be able to run the engine at a high rate when you're feeding it crap. Try to put bad gas in your car. It's bad. It's an analogy, but you got to fuel. You got to fuel your body with the best stuff if you want to be in a high performance business.
Absolutely. So that high performance for you landed you in the Hall of Fame, and I'm proud of the fact that I got into the High School Hall of Fame, and then about 6 months ago I was inducted into the University of Washington with my team.
Congrats.
Yeah, no, it's a huge honor, and I don't think I'll be invited to be in the Hall of Fame of the NFL, and there's only a certain amount of guys who they allow in. And actually, you're the number 2, the second guy, Jan Stenerud, who I met at your induction at the Ring of down in New Orleans.
The Ring of Honor,
yeah, Ring of Honor in 215, it might have been.
Yeah.
And so, what was that like? Right, so I see you on TV. There's probably 7 or 8 of you guys that were inducted. You get up there 7. You gave just this beautiful speech. I watched the whole thing. You're in a stadium where it's just jam packed, right? And you're the show. I mean, you are being honored, and then they go and they do a bronze statue of you, that will live in perpetuity. And
they ran out of bronze, I think.
There's a lot of perpetuity for you. So tell me what like getting the call, going through the process, standing up there, and there's all this ceremony around it, and you're standing up there with all these other greats too, and there's all these other greats that are in the audience watching you, former Hall of Famers and all kinds of stuff. So walk through that.
Yeah, it far exceeded my expectations. The 4 days in Canton, Ohio, a couple of weeks ago, far exceeded what I had expected it to be. I had been there as a guest of other honorees, Chris Dolman and Will Shields. So I had been to a couple of ceremonies, and as a spectator, it's mind-blowing. And watching all the gold jackets on Friday night during that gold jacket dinner, mind-blowing. You go, wow, there's Jim Brown, there's Roger Staubach. There's, XYZ, you can go on. There's 310 Hall of Famers in the Hall right now. About 175 are still living. And so when you do the numbers, it's 0.006% of all football players, right, that play, that are in the Hall. Now, if you want to go another step further and say how many kickers, it becomes mind-blowing.
Yeah, there's 2, you and Jan.
Yeah, there's 2, and then you got Blanda and Grosser, but they played other positions. Mm-hmm. So, from an experience point, I have to say it was almost an out of body experience because I went to what's called the Ray Nitschke luncheon, and it's only Hall of Famers, gold jackets. They close the doors, and nobody else is allowed in there, just the gold jackets. And this year, I think we had about 120, 130 guys. And then they get up and talk, and the 7 new guys are not allowed to talk. We're just sitting there and listening. And Jan got up and spoke on my behalf, which was beautiful. It was very moving. And I'm sitting next to Roger Staubach, and here's Joe DeLaMalure, and there's, just name a legend. He's sitting right there at my table.
Yep.
And I literally just could not wrap my brain around the fact that I was in this exclusive company. It just didn't make any sense to me. that this boy from Denmark who came over as an immigrant 40 years ago, now, has got a bronze bust in Canton, Ohio, and a gold jacket that he can wear anytime he wants. Hell, he can sit and smoke a cigar and drink a glass of red wine in a skivvies if he wanted to. That's what I might do, by the way.
Well, yeah, I'll join you, right? With my purple jacket from the UW.
There we go. That would be a great picture.
yeah. Purple and gold. There you go. So you get up there, and were you nervous when you were giving your speech? I mean, it was very heartfelt. It's your story, and really, you were just recounting, how this kid came over from Copenhagen and your journey, and it was a beautiful story, and it was just great to see all the affection, admiration for the people that really respected what you had done.
Well, I'll tell you, I worked hard on this speech because it's a speech that's important. It's going to live in forever, and you will be able to go in on YouTube or on the Pro Football Hall of Fame site, and you can just say, hey, I want to look at this speech, and it's there. And so I didn't want to be terribly long. My speech was 19 minutes, 33 seconds. I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to take the listener and the viewer into my story as vividly and as specifically as I could. And that's why I try to talk about my initial introduction to the game with some humor and try to just let the people understand from my immigrant perspective how strange I thought the sport was. And I encourage people to, it's had over 1.2 million views. So I encourage you to go watch it. I think it's worth 19 minutes and 33 seconds of storytelling. And then I wanted to thank people. Another thing that's important, you don't want to get into thanking 1,000 people, but key people that meant something to you along the way. I think it's important to mention, and then really just tell stories and give people a couple of takeaways. Give your kids a couple of takeaways they can use too, and hopefully the listener can use too.
Yeah, well, you certainly, thanked your wife, Jennifer, who's a sweetheart, and they zeroed in on both your kids, which was cool, right? So, I mean, what a great thing for your kids to, as a leader, as a mentor, to inspire them to achieve greatness, right? When they see you up there like that.
Yeah, and Sebastian was my presenter, so he was actually my 17-year-old boy, and I also have Aiden, who's 13, or we have Aiden, I should say, but Sebastian was my presenter, and he did a really nice job, I thought, and wasn't nervous, wasn't apprehensive. I had asked him if he really wanted to do this, because it was an important part of the piece, and he said, yeah, I'm in, and he was up to it, and Aiden was great. He declined, when I asked him, you guys can split it. We can go 50-50 on this thing. And Aiden's like, no, Sebastian can do this. I'll do something, when I get 17, we'll do something fun. So he wasn't too worried about it. And so it was just important to include the family. This is the very, as public as this thing is, it's also a very intensely prideful moment in a private way, because a lot of people are invested in your life for a long time. Whether it's family or friends or co-workers or teammates, everybody's invested. And as I said in my speech, it's not a me journey, it's a we journey. I really feel strongly about that.
Yeah, no, I love that. Absolutely love that. I actually repeated that to somebody else after I listened to it, and it was appropriate in a different setting. But okay, so you're done with that. You're back, and what are you up to now? I think, and by the way, I also think I heard that you were mentoring one of Jim Mora's kickers at UCLA. So I'm sure you're doing some of that. What a great resource.
Yeah, I'll tell you, J.J. Molson has been a lot of fun to get to know, and Jim reached out to me just to say, hey, do you mind speaking with J.J. and just give him a few pointers and point him in the right direction. And that's really what mentoring is all about. I have mentors too, business mentors who helped me along the way, who are able to clarify things that you can't see because you're too close to it. I think it's really important to have just another set of ears and eyes on things that can help you along the way and to give you levity and an objective voice. A lot of time when you're in the mud, when you're in the grind, you don't see it. You don't see it as clearly. And Yeah, that's been fun with JJ, and I have kids in Atlanta. I live in Atlanta, so kids that I'm working with here on the high school level. I have pro level guys that I work with and college level guys, all one-on-one stuff, all private one-on-one stuff.
Yeah, JJ's a good guy. I think he's got the leg. It's just in between the ears for him, and he'll get there. And as you know, kicking or really anything is all about confidence. Right.
It's about the confidence of owning your workbench and working that workbench, defining the workbench, and understanding exactly what you have to do. As an athlete, you control. Told JJ, you control two things as an athlete, as a high performer, and that's your attitude and that's your effort. Everything else is white noise, and I think it clarified him because he's focusing on things he can't control. I said, if you cannot control it, it's white noise. Don't waste any energy on it. Just really dial in on what you can control. Be as good as you can. Make that positive behavior the dominant behavior. And that's what you have to do in kicking. It's a repetitive motion, and you have to be able to replicate in a dominant fashion, under pressure, under duress. And so we spoke at great length about just how we can free him up to do that. And it's probably going to take me a trip to L.A., which I'm not upset about, by the way, but I'm sure it's going to take me a trip to UCLA to kind of fine-tune this thing.
Yeah. Well, you always have a room here at the Sugar Shack in Hermosa Beach.
The Sugar Shack.
The Sugar Shack. Oh, yeah. So where can people reach you?
My website, MortonAnderson.com, would probably be the easiest place to get me. And I'm also on Facebook. I have a Twitter at MA2544. I'm not that active on it, but I have Facebook, I have Twitter, I have website. That's fun to kind of go through. A lot of stuff on the website has old pictures and some of the, the statistics and also videos of my I do a lot of public speaking. I've done some TED Talks and corporate speaking. I'm doing more and more of that now. Then it's really fun to go out and engage and try to help CEOs and try to help companies, reach their full potential and free them up to do what they're supposed to do instead of getting muddled down with a bunch of white noise. It's there's a lot of parallels between sports and life and business. It's really not that difficult.
Yeah, that's great stuff. So MortonAnderson.com. So, well, listen, Morton, it's been great. I look forward to seeing you out here in L.A. We'll definitely do a game at UCLA. We'll be on the sidelines together, and just kind of like the way it used to be down in New Orleans. So,
that'll be fun.
So many congratulations to you. We've always been a great friend to me, and it's just greatly appreciated, okay?
Thanks, Mark. I really enjoyed talking to you today, man.
All right. Have a great day.
You too, brother.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast this week. We had another great guest, and it is so awesome to continually have these different people on, talk about their different adversity, how they've overcome that, and what they've done to affect change in their life to become very successful. So really appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we love the rating and reviews that you guys do on iTunes. If you haven't done that, please go do that. It really helps us in terms of increasing our visibility within iTunes. Anyways, it's just fun to share the love and what these different stories, these different people are all about. So make sure you tune in next week. We appreciate it. And that's it. Bye.